Welcome back to Vietnamese Vixens. Today's story isn't about romance gone wrong or a bar girl scam. It's darker than that. It's about something happening to Western retirees across Vietnam right now. Something most people don't talk about until it's too late. We're talking about financial devastation, complete bankruptcy. Men who came here with comfortable pensions and decades of savings, now sleeping in hostels or begging family for plane tickets home. The statistics are brutal. 4 out of 5 Western retirees who move to Vietnam leave broke or deeply in debt within 3 years. Today's story comes from Lars Eriksson, 67 years old, from Malmö, Sweden. Former telecommunications engineer. 35 years of steady work, early retirement package, pension, that should have carried him comfortably through old age. He traded Swedish winters for Vietnamese sunshine and lost absolutely everything in 18 months. Not to a scammer, not to a con artist, to something far more insidious, his own need to feel alive again. Before we dive in, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. If you know someone who made a move like this, or if you're thinking about retiring abroad yourself, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you need to hear this. Alright, here's Lars's story, in his own words. I need you to understand something right from the start. I'm not stupid. I didn't fall off a boat yesterday. I worked in telecommunications for 35 years. I understand numbers. I understand planning. I understand risk assessment. And yet here I am, 67 years old, sitting in a crappy apartment near Tan Son Nhat Airport in Ho Chi Minh City, waiting for a flight back to Sweden that my daughter had to pay for because I can't afford the ticket myself. Everything I built over 3.5 decades gone. Not stolen, not gambled away, just slowly bled out in a country everyone told me was dirt cheap. So yeah, I'm not stupid. But I was lonely, and loneliness makes you do math differently. Let me take you back to Sweden. 2 years before I ever set foot in Vietnam, my wife Annika died. Cancer. 63 years old. We'd been married 40 years, had our whole retirement planned out, the trips we'd take, the grandkids we'd spoil, the quiet life we'd earned. Then she was gone, and I was sitting in our apartment in Malmö, looking at empty rooms and silence that felt like it had weight. The Swedish winter didn't help. November to March is just darkness and cold and more darkness. I'd wake up, the sun wouldn't rise until 8:30. It'd be dark again by 3 in the afternoon. I'd sit there with my coffee, looking out at gray sky and gray buildings and gray everything, and I'd think, is this it? Is this what I worked my whole life for? My pension was 22,000 kronor a month. That's about 2,400 euros, give or take. In Sweden, that's tight. Not poverty, but tight. My rent alone was 9,000 kronor. Add utilities, food, insurance, transportation, I was getting by. But every month I watched my savings account tick down a little. 100 euros here, 200 there. I wasn't living. I was existing. Waiting to die in the same gray apartment where Annika died. That's when the YouTube algorithm got me. I don't even remember what I was searching for initially. Probably something about dealing with grief, or early retirement, or I don't know. But suddenly my feed was full of these videos. Living in Vietnam on $800 a month. Why I left Europe for Southeast Asia. Retire like a king in Da Nang. I started watching them. These guys, mostly my age or younger, sitting in beautiful apartments with balconies overlooking beaches, drinking beer that cost $1, eating incredible food for pocket change. They'd show their monthly budgets. Rent, $300. Food, $200. Entertainment, $100. I'd sit there in my cold apartment doing the conversion in my head. My pension would be worth 35,000 kronor in Vietnam. I could live like those guys in the videos and still save money every month. I joined the Facebook groups. Vietnam expats. Expats in Da Nang. Digital nomads, Southeast Asia. Everyone was so encouraging. Best decision I ever made. Should have done it years ago. My quality of life is 10 times what it was back home. I started doing serious research, Google spreadsheets, cost breakdowns. I calculated everything. A nice apartment near the beach, $400 to $500. Food, $300 if I ate well. Utilities, $100. Entertainment, $200. Health insurance, $200. Even being generous, I was looking at $1,500 a month, maybe $1,800. That left me $1,000 monthly to save or travel or whatever. In Sweden, I was barely breaking even. But it wasn't just about money. I need you to understand that. The money made it possible. But what really pulled me was the promise of feeling something again. Every video I watched, every blog post I read, they all talked about the energy of Vietnam. The warmth, not just weather, but people. The chaos and life and color. The sense that you could start over. Be someone new. Matter in a way you'd stopped mattering back home. I was invisible in Malmö. Just another old man shuffling through Systembolaget buying his weekly wine ration. In Vietnam, these videos promised Western men were respected, valued, interesting just by existing. My daughter Emma thought I was insane. We had dinner in Stockholm. She lives there with her husband and 2 kids, and I told her my plan. She just stared at me. Papa, you don't speak Vietnamese. You've never even been to Asia. You have healthcare here. You have stability. You have family. I told her I needed more than stability. I needed to feel alive before I died. She said I was running away from grief. Maybe she was right. Probably she was right. But I bought the ticket anyway. I landed in Hanoi in September, stepped out of Noi Bai Airport into heat that hit me like a physical thing. 34 degrees, humidity that made the air thick enough to chew. Within 30 seconds, I was sweating through my shirt. The taxi ride into the city was overwhelming in a way I wasn't prepared for. Motorbikes everywhere, hundreds of them, weaving through traffic like schools of fish. Horns constantly. Street vendors on every corner. The smell of exhaust mixed with grilling meat, mixed with fruit, mixed with something I couldn't identify. Everything was so alive, so loud, so much. I'd booked a hotel in the old quarter for a week while I figured things out. That first night, I barely slept. The noise never stopped. Motorbikes at 3 in the morning, someone's karaoke at 4, dogs barking. The city just didn't have an off switch. I loved it. I loved how different it was from the silent death of my Malmö apartment. But Hanoi felt too intense for long-term living. Too much motorbike exhaust. Too chaotic. Too much. I'd read about Da Nang. The videos all called it the perfect expat city. Big enough to have everything you needed, small enough to feel manageable. Beautiful beaches. Growing expat community. More relaxed than Hanoi or Saigon. So after a week, I flew down there. Da Nang hit different. The moment I saw my K beach, I understood why people stayed. 6 kilometers of white sand, clean water, mountains in the distance. I found a serviced apartment 2 blocks from the beach. $600 a month, including cleaning service twice a week. It had air conditioning, Western bathroom, decent Wi-Fi. The apartment was small, but it had a balcony where I could sit in the evenings and hear the ocean. Those first few weeks felt like validation, like proof that everyone back home was wrong and I was right. I'd wake up at 6, walk to the beach, watch the sunrise over the South China Sea. Old Vietnamese people doing Tai Chi. A few surfers out early, the sand still cool under my feet. I'd get iced coffee from a street vendor for 15,000 dong 50 cents, and it was better than any coffee I'd had in Sweden. Better and 50 times cheaper. I'd walk the streets discovering things. A banh mi cart that made sandwiches so good, I actually closed my eyes when I bit into them. 70 cents. A local place that did seam time broken rice with grilled pork and egg for $1.50. Beer hoy on street corners. Fresh beers served in small plastic cups, 5,000 dong, 20 cents. I'd sit there with Vietnamese construction workers on their lunch break, none of us speaking the same language, just drinking cold beer in the heat. And I'd think this is living. I met other expats at a bar called The Waterfront in An Thuong. It was the default gathering spot for foreigners. Most of them were young, 20-somethings teaching English or doing remote work, calling themselves digital nomads. But there were a few guys my age. Mike from Australia taught at a language center. Hans from Germany said he was between projects, which I later learned meant unemployed. Tommy from California lived on Social Security and seemed to spend all day every day at the bar. We'd sit there drinking $2 beers, talking about how much better life was here than back home, how far our money went, how young we felt, how Western women our age had given up, but Vietnamese women still took care of themselves, still smiled at us, still made us feel like men. I see now how pathetic that sounds. A bunch of aging foreign men congratulating each other for being able to afford things in a poor country. But at the time it felt like wisdom. Like we'd figured something out that people back home were too scared or too stuck to see. The math still looked good in those early weeks. I was spending maybe $1,200 a month total. My serviced apartment was $600. Food was running me $300. Even eating well mixture of street food and nicer restaurants. Entertainment, beer, coffee, another $200. Utilities were included. My health insurance was $200. I was living better than I had in years, and still saving almost $1,000 every month. On paper, it was working perfectly. But there were small things I was already noticing, small cracks in the paradise narrative that I chose to ignore. The service department was comfortable, but it was sterile. Corporate. It didn't feel like home, it felt like an extended hotel stay. I wanted something that felt like mine, a real place. The food thing was trickier than the blogs made it seem. Street food was cheap, but my 67-year-old Swedish stomach couldn't handle it every day. The oils, the spices, the questionable hygiene I spent enough time with, stomach problems that I started defaulting to Western restaurants, which weren't cheap. Breakfast at a cafe that served real coffee and eggs, the way I liked them, $8, $10. Not Swedish prices, but not street food prices either. The heat was harder than I'd expected. I kept the air conditioning running almost constantly. My first electricity bill was $90. The apartment was small, and still it cost that much. And the loneliness. That was the thing nobody in the videos talked about. Yes, there were other expats to drink with. Yes, Vietnamese people were friendly and smiling. But I didn't speak the language. I couldn't have a real conversation with my landlord, or the woman who sold me coffee every morning, or anyone outside the expat bubble. The guys at the waterfront were fine for drinking buddies, but they weren't friends, not real ones. Mike was 20 years younger, and mostly wanted to talk about the Vietnamese girls he was sleeping with. Hans complained constantly about money. Tommy was drunk before noon most days. I was living in paradise, and I was still lonely. Maybe more lonely because now I couldn't even blame the Swedish winter. This was supposed to fix everything, and I still felt empty. So I did what lonely men with money in poor countries do. I started spending more. Because spending money made me feel less alone, at least temporarily. A nicer dinner, another beer, a massage, new clothes, a better phone. Small things that added up. But I didn't see it then. I just saw myself finally enjoying life after decades of working and saving and being responsible. I'd earned this. I deserved this, that's what I told myself. And the math still worked, mostly. As long as I didn't look too closely at exactly where all the money was going. The service department started feeling wrong about 6 weeks in. Too temporary. Too much like I was still just visiting. Still just a tourist who could leave any moment. I wanted roots. Something that felt permanent. I mentioned this at the waterfront one afternoon, and Mike knew a real estate agent. Of course he did. Mike knew everyone. Her name was Fying. He said she was good, spoke perfect English, understood what Western guys wanted. The way he said it made me think he'd slept with her, but I didn't ask. Fying met me at a cafe in Thuong. Mid-30s, professional, sharp. Her English wasn't just good, it was better than some native speakers I knew. She'd studied in Australia for 2 years, worked in hotel management, then switched to real estate because that's where the money was with all the expats moving in. She asked smart questions. What was my budget? What did I need? Did I want to be near the beach, or was I open to local neighborhoods? I told her $600 monthly, same as the service department. She smiled, not condescending, but like she was amused by something I didn't understand yet. She said she could work with that, but I should consider going a bit higher if I wanted something really nice. She showed me 3 places. The first 2 were okay. Basic apartments in expat buildings, similar to what I had. But the third one, God, the third one. It was a house in Hoa Hai, maybe 15 minutes from the beach by motorbike. 2 bedrooms, actual kitchen, living room, little garden in the back. Tile floors, high ceilings, ceiling fans and air conditioning. Quiet neighborhood, mostly Vietnamese families. She walked me through it and I could picture it. My furniture, my life. A real home. The rent was $900 a month. I told her it was more than I wanted to spend. She nodded, started walking me back out. Then she stopped in the living room, gestured around. Lars, you seem like someone who wants quality, who deserves comfort. $300 more per month, that's $10 a day. What is $10? 2 beers, 1 nice dinner. But this. She swept her hand around. This is your life. Every day you wake up here instead of that hotel room. You decide what $10 a day is worth to you. I signed the lease that afternoon. The house was empty. The landlord wanted it furnished, said he'd reduce rent by $100 if I bought everything and left it when I moved out. That made sense to me. I was planning to stay long-term anyway. Pshing helped me shop. We went to furniture stores, to the big Lotte Mart, to local shops. A bed, a couch, a table and chairs, kitchen supplies, towels, dishes, everything you need to actually live. She negotiated in Vietnamese, got me good prices, she said. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? The total was around $2,000. Not cheap, but not terrible. I was building a life. Then the motorbike. I couldn't keep taking taxis everywhere. Every expat in Da Nang had a motorbike. Mike took me to a guy who sold used bikes to foreigners. A decent Honda Wave, automatic, easy to ride, $400. Another $200 for a good helmet and a rain jacket because rainy season was coming. Mike spent an afternoon teaching me to ride. I'd never been on a motorbike in my life. The traffic terrified me at first. All those bikes weaving and cutting and trusting each other not to crash. But after a week I got it. There's a rhythm to it. You flow with everyone else. It's actually beautiful in its way. The house felt right. I'd wake up to roosters from a neighbor's yard instead of motorbike traffic. I'd make real coffee in my kitchen, sit in my garden in the evenings with a beer. This was what I'd imagined when I left Sweden. But the costs were adding up in ways I hadn't quite planned for. $900 rent instead of $600, the furniture, the bike. My first electricity bill for the house was $140 bigger space, more air conditioning. I was running it constantly because the heat was oppressive. My water heater was electric and I was taking long showers. Little things. And I still wasn't cooking much. I'd gone to the local market a few times, but it was overwhelming. Everything was different. I didn't know what cuts of meat were what, vegetables I didn't recognize, vendors who didn't speak English. The one time I tried buying chicken, I'm pretty sure I got ripped off, paid way too much for way too little, and it still had feathers on it. It felt easier to just eat out. But eating out every meal adds up, even in Vietnam. Breakfast at a Western cafe, $8. Lunch somewhere local, $5 or $6. Dinner at a nice place, $15, $20. I was spending $400 a month on food, probably more. Then there was the health insurance situation. I'd gotten basic international coverage before leaving Sweden, but it had a high deductible. 3 months into Vietnam, I got food poisoning. Bad. Spent a night vomiting and shitting until I was dizzy from dehydration. Mike took me to family medical practice, the international clinic all the expats used. They got me stable, gave me IV fluids, kept me for observation. The bill was $800. My insurance covered some, but I paid $300 out of pocket. After that, I upgraded to better coverage. Another $100 a month. It seemed necessary. I was 67 in a foreign country. I couldn't take chances. So let's do the math I wasn't quite doing then. 900 rent, 400 food, 240 utilities averaging out, 300 insurance, 200 entertainment, drinks, coffee. That's $2,040 monthly. My pension was $2,400. I still had $600 left over. Still saving, still working. Except, I wasn't accounting for the other stuff. The motorbike maintenance. The visa runs every 3 months and the agent fees. The new clothes, because mine were all wrong for the climate. The Western groceries I'd buy at Lotte Mart, because sometimes I just needed real cheese, or real bread, or something that tasted like home. The nights I'd go out and drink too much, and spend $100 without thinking about it. By the time I'd been in the house 3 months, I wasn't saving anymore. I was breaking even, maybe spending a little more than my pension some months. But I wasn't worried. I had savings, plenty of savings. This was fine. That's when I met Lynn, November, 6 months into my Vietnam life. I was at a cafe in An Thuong, one of those trendy places with good Wi-Fi and actual espresso. Sitting outside, reading on my iPad, enjoying the cooler weather, she walked past, stopped, looked at me, smiled, asked in broken English if I was Swedish. I was surprised most people guessed American or Australian. She said she could tell by my features. She'd worked at a hotel where lots of Scandinavians stayed. Could she practice her English with me? She sat down, 28 years old. Stunning in that effortless way some Vietnamese women are. Hair to her waist, perfect skin, delicate. She worked at the Hyatt, guest relations. She was trying to improve her English to move up to management. We talked for an hour. Her English was rough but enthusiastic. She laughed at herself when she got words wrong. Asked about Sweden, about snow, about why I'd come to Vietnam. She seemed genuinely interested, not like the bar girls who talked to foreign men with calculation in their eyes. This felt real. She came back to the same cafe 2 days later. Said she'd hoped I'd be there. We talked again. She told me about her family in Quich Nam province, her mother who sold vegetables in the market, her younger brother in university, her father who died when she was a teenager. She was supporting them on her hotel salary, sending half her paycheck home every month. I found that admirable, selfless. She asked if I wanted to have dinner sometime. Real dinner, not just coffee. I took her to a nice restaurant near the Dragon Bridge. One of those places with white tablecloths and river views and prices aimed at tourists. Dinner came to $80 with drinks. She was so grateful. Kept saying it was too much. I shouldn't have. But she ordered the expensive fish and 2 cocktails, so I didn't quite believe the protests. Still, I liked how it felt. Being generous. Being the man who could afford to treat a beautiful young woman to a nice evening. I'd stopped feeling like a man somewhere in those gray Swedish years. This brought it back. We started seeing each other regularly. Coffee dates, walks on the beach, dinners. She never asked for anything directly. That's important to understand. She wasn't like the stereotypical bar girl everyone warned about. But situations would arise. 3 weeks into seeing her, her mother got sick, needed to see a doctor. The public hospital had a 3-week wait. Private hospital could see her immediately, but it was expensive. Lynn was crying when she told me this. Real tears. She wasn't asking for money. She was just sharing her problem with someone she trusted. I offered $50. She was so grateful. Hugged me. That hug felt worth more than $50. Her motorbike broke down. $200 to fix. Her brother's university fees were due, and she was short. $300. Small amounts, never directly requested. Just situations that arose in conversation, where I could see she was stressed, where offering help felt natural, generous. Like what a good man does for someone he cares about. And her gratitude was real. Physical. We'd started sleeping together by then. She made me feel 20 years younger. Desired. Important. After 2 months, she started staying at my house most nights. It made sense. Her place was tiny, shared with 2 roommates. She was at my house constantly anyway. This way, she could save her rent money, send more home to her mother. I liked having her there. Coming home to someone, not eating alone, the sex. The way she'd make Vietnamese coffee in the morning, exactly how I liked it. The companionship. But things shifted when she moved in. Subtle at first. Her friends started coming by. Young Vietnamese women who giggled and spoke rapidly in Vietnamese. They'd stay for hours. I'd buy snacks, drinks, feel obligated to be hospitable. Lynn mentioned she needed a spa day. She worked so hard at the hotel, dealt with difficult guests, needed to relax. Could we go together? The spa day cost $120. Then she needed a new phone. Her old one was so slow, embarrassing at work, made it hard to practice English. The iPhone 13 was on sale. $800. I hesitated on that one. That was real money. She looked hurt. Said I didn't have to. She understood. She'd just have to wait and save up herself. The guilt worked. I bought the phone. Her family emergencies became more frequent. Her mother needed dental work. Her brother needed a laptop for school. Her aunt was in a motorbike accident. $500 here, $300 there. I started to notice she never had money herself. She worked at a 4-star hotel, must have been making decent money, but there was always something. Always a reason why she was broke. Always family obligation. In Vietnamese culture, she explained, family comes first. Always. You don't say no to family. I understood that. Respected it even. I came from a culture where we abandoned our elderly in care homes and pretended we were civilized. Then came the business proposal. March. I'd been in Vietnam 9 months. Lean's cousin Tuan owned a small cafe in the local neighborhood. It was struggling. He needed investment to renovate, to add a food menu, to attract more customers. $10,000 would transform it, make it profitable. Lin said I could be a partner, silent partner. Just the investment. Tuan would run everything. I'd get 30% of profits. She showed me the cafe. It was tiny, run down, definitely needed work. Tuan spoke no English but smiled a lot and shook my hand enthusiastically. Lin translated. He seemed earnest. I said I needed to think about it. Lin got quiet, pulled away physically. Said she understood. I'd been so generous already. She didn't want me to think she was using me. Maybe this relationship was moving too fast. Maybe I wanted someone younger who didn't have family obligations. The suggestion that she might leave terrified me more than I expected. I was 67. I wasn't going to find another beautiful 28-year-old woman who made me feel alive. I was getting exactly what those guys at the waterfront talked about. What I'd come to Vietnam for. And she wasn't even asking for herself. This was business, investment. I'd get returns. I gave Tuan 8,000, told myself I was being smart, keeping two back, signed documents I couldn't read. Lin translated them. Said it was just standard partnership agreement. Tuan started renovations, new paint, new furniture, new espresso machine. I went by once a week to check progress. It looked good. Professional. Maybe this would actually work. But the cafe opened and nobody came. Wrong location, Tuan said through Lin's translation, needed marketing. Another $2,000 would fix it. I'd already put in 8. What's 2 more to protect my investment? I gave it to him. The cafe was open 4 months before it quietly closed. Tuan disappeared. Lin said she was angry at him too. She'd lost face with me because of his failure. She was embarrassed. I believed her. Maybe I had to believe her. The alternative was too ugly to look at directly. By April, I was 14 months into my Vietnam adventure, and the math had stopped working. I just didn't want to admit it yet. You know how you can feel something going wrong, but you keep telling yourself stories to avoid facing it? That was me. Every morning, I'd check my bank accounts on my phone, my Swedish pension account, my savings account, and I'd see the numbers getting smaller, and I'd tell myself it was temporary, just a rough patch. The cafe investment was bad luck. Lin's family emergencies would ease up. I'd start cooking more at home. I'd cut back on drinks. Next month would be better. But next month never was. The expenses kept coming, like waves. Relentless. Lin's father's death anniversary required a ceremony. Her family expected her to contribute significantly. It was about respect, about honor. $1,500. Her brother got accepted to a better university. The tuition difference was $2,000 for the semester, but it would change his life. Her mother needed surgery, not emergency surgery. Gallbladder. Could wait, but why should she suffer? $3,000 at the private hospital. Every time I hesitated, Lin would get this look. Not angry. Worse than angry. Disappointed. Like she'd misjudged my character. Like she'd thought I was a good man, but maybe she was wrong. She'd say things like, I understand. It's okay. My family is not your responsibility, in this quiet voice that made me feel like the cheapest bastard who ever lived. And then I'd transfer the money and she'd light up, hug me, tell me I was the best man she'd ever known. That gratitude felt like love. I needed it to be love because if it wasn't love, then what the hell was I doing? I was spending $4,000 some months, $5,000 others. My pension was $2,400. I was hemorrhaging savings at a rate I couldn't sustain but somehow couldn't stop. It's like I was watching myself from outside my body, screaming at myself to wake up, but the me inside just kept making transfers, kept signing up for one more thing. Because stopping meant admitting I'd been a fool. Stopping meant losing Lin. Stopping meant being alone again in that house I'd furnished, in that country where I couldn't speak the language, with nothing but the truth of my own stupidity for company. The guys at the waterfront started looking different to me. Tommy, who drank from noon till midnight, I realized he was broke. That's why he was always there. Nowhere else to go. His social security covered a cheap room and beer, and that was it. Hans, who was between projects, he was teaching private English lessons under the table for cash, barely surviving. Mike seemed okay, but even he admitted one drunk night that he was on a tourist visa because he couldn't afford the business visa fees anymore. The paradise we'd all convinced each other we'd found was looking more like a waiting room, a place where aging Western men came to slowly spend everything they had while pretending it was living. I started seeing how the cycle worked. You came to Vietnam because your money went further. You felt rich for the first time in decades. You spent more freely than you did back home because everything seemed cheap. You met a girl who made you feel young. You wanted to keep feeling young, so you spent more. She had family obligations, real ones, probably. Vietnam is a poor country. People genuinely struggle, but also, you were the ATM, the foreign boyfriend. That's what you were for. And you paid because the alternative was losing the girl and facing what you'd become. A lonely old man in a foreign country spending his retirement fund on the illusion of mattering. In July, I checked my savings account and my stomach dropped. I'd come to Vietnam with 85,000 euros saved. 35 years of careful saving. That account had 42,000 left. In 14 months, I'd burned through 43,000 euros. $50,000. Gone. My pension covered maybe half my actual spending. The rest came from savings. At this rate, I had less than a year before. I was completely broke. I sat in my house, the house I'd spent $2,000 furnishing, and tried to figure out where it had all gone. The cafe, $8,000 straight into a black hole, Lynn's emergencies. I tried to add them up. Stopped when I got past 15,000. The higher rent, the furniture, the motorbike, the upgraded insurance, the constant eating out, the drinks, the spa days, the phones, the gifts, the family ceremonies. Death by 1,000 cuts. Each individual expense had seemed reasonable in the moment, necessary even. But together they destroyed me. I needed to talk to Lynn, really talk. No more avoiding. I waited until she got home from work. Asked her to sit down, told her we needed to change things. I couldn't keep spending like this. I needed to budget properly, live within my pension. She nodded, said she understood. I felt relieved, like we'd cleared the air. Then 2 days later, her sister's wedding came up. In Vietnamese culture, the groom's family pays for most of the wedding, but guests are expected to give money. Substantial money, especially a wealthy foreign boyfriend. Lean's eyes were wet when she told me. She didn't want to ask. But her sister only gets married once. Her whole family would be there. What would they think if Lynn showed up with nothing? What would they think of me? I gave her $1,200. She kissed me, thanked me, told me after the wedding things would calm down. After the wedding we could save together, plan our future, maybe even talk about marriage. That word marriage, it should have terrified me, but instead it gave me hope. Like this was all going somewhere. Like I wasn't just paying for companionship, we were building something. The wedding was in Quang Nam. Lynn insisted I come, meet her family. I rented a car and driver because I wasn't confident enough on the motorbike for that distance. The wedding was overwhelming, 300 people. I understood nothing. Everyone stared at me. The old white guy with the beautiful young daughter. That's what it looked like, what it was. Her family was polite but distant. Her mother took my hand and said something in Vietnamese. Lynn translated. She says thank you for taking care of her daughter. Taking care of. That's what I was doing. Taking care of. Not loving. Not partnering. Taking care of. I gave Lynn the money envelope. She disappeared into the crowd. I sat at a table with distant relatives who smiled and nodded and didn't speak English. Drank too much. Watched Lynn laughing with her friends, taking selfies, looking beautiful and young, and nothing like someone who needed me. Just someone who'd found a resource and was using it until it ran out. We drove back to Da Nang in silence. Something had shifted. Maybe in me. Maybe in her sensing something in me. We got home and she said she was tired, went to bed. I sat in my living room looking at my bank app. 40,000 euros left, $48,000. And my current burn rate 6 months, maybe 8 if I got strict immediately. Then what? Go back to Sweden broke. I'd burned all my savings on weather and ego, and a woman who called me baby, but had never once offered to pay for anything. I started Googling in the dark. Broke expats Vietnam. Found forums I'd never looked at before. Guys warning each other. Stories like mine, but worse. The Australian who'd given his girlfriend's family $30,000 to build a house that never got built. The American who'd married his girlfriend and found out after the visa was approved that she had another boyfriend. The German who died alone in Nha Trang and nobody found him for 3 weeks. The embassy had to contact his sister who didn't even know he'd been in Vietnam. There was a whole other expat community I'd never seen. The ones who'd already lost everything, teaching illegal English lessons. Living in $200 a month rooms with no air conditioning, borrowing money from each other. Some had been in Vietnam 10 years, would die here because they couldn't afford a ticket home. This was the end game. This was where my path led if I didn't stop. August, 15 months in Vietnam. I tried to talk to Lynn again. Really talk. Told her I couldn't keep doing this. Showed her my bank balance. She looked at the number and something flickered across her face. Fear maybe. Calculation definitely. She said okay. She understood. She'd get more shifts at the hotel. Her family would understand she couldn't help as much. We'd be a team. I wanted to believe her. 3 days later, her different cousin, had a motorbike accident. Hospital bills. $400. Lynn was crying. Real tears or fake, I couldn't tell anymore. I gave her 200. Said that's all I could do. She took it, didn't thank me. Just took it and left for work. She started coming home later, said work was busy, started spending more time on her phone. When I tried to be affectionate, she'd accept it, but not return it. The sex stopped. She slept on her side of the bed, as far from me as possible. I knew what was happening. The money was running out, so she was running out. But I couldn't say it. Couldn't confront it. Because confronting it meant admitting what I'd known somewhere deep down for months. September. The confrontation I'd been avoiding happened without me initiating it. I woke up at 2 in the morning. Lynn wasn't in bed. I found her on the balcony, on her phone, speaking rapid Vietnamese. She saw me and hung up fast, too fast. I asked who she was talking to. She said her mother. I said it's 2 in the morning. She said her mother can't sleep, has insomnia. The lie was so obvious we both heard it hanging in the air. I asked her directly, "Are you seeing someone else?" She didn't deny it, just looked at me with this tired expression, said in English that was suddenly way better than it had been. "Lars, what did you think this was? You are 67. I am 28. You think this is love? You pay me. You pay my family. That's what this is." The honesty was more brutal than any lie. I asked how long. She said, "Does it matter?" I asked if any of it was real. She said some of it. The beginning, maybe. But I kept wanting to fix everything with money, so she let me. That's what foreign boyfriends do. That's what they're for. She moved out the next day, took everything I'd bought her, the phone, the laptop, the jewelry, the nice clothes, left me the furniture because she had no use for it. Her last words were, "You should go home, Lars. Vietnam is not for you." Then she was gone. I sat in that empty house and did the final math. I'd been in Vietnam 16 months. I had 38,000 euros left, $46,000. I'd spent 47,000 euros, $56,000. On what? A furnished house I was renting, a motorbike worth maybe $200 now, some clothes, memories that felt like wounds, a lesson that cost me 35 years of savings. The landlord wanted 6 months advance, or I had to leave. I couldn't pay it, didn't want to. I moved to a cheap apartment near the airport, $300 a month, 1 room, shared bathroom, no air conditioning. This was the real affordable Vietnam, the one that wasn't in the YouTube videos. I called Emma, my daughter, told her I needed help getting home. There was a silence on the line that lasted forever. Then she said, "How much do you have left, Papa?" I told her. She did the math I'd been avoiding. Said I had maybe a year of living expenses in Sweden if I was careful. No cushion. No emergency fund, nothing for medical costs, or if anything went wrong, I'd have to apply for public assistance, maybe qualify for public housing eventually. At 67, I'd be starting over like an immigrant, like someone who'd never worked a day in their life. She bought me a ticket, said she'd send it to my email, said we'd figure out the rest when I got home. Her voice was cold, not angry cold, disappointed cold. I'd embarrassed her, proven her right in a way that gave her no satisfaction. I'm sitting in this apartment writing this. My flight is in 6 days. I've been talking to the other guys in my building, the ones nobody makes YouTube videos about, the English teacher who's 53 and sleeps on a mattress on the floor, sends every spare dollar to his ex-wife and kids in the UK, been here 8 years, says he'll probably die here. The Australian who's 71, has liver problems from decades of drinking, can't afford to go home for treatment. Vietnam's cheap if you don't need healthcare. Expensive if you do. He knows which one he is. 4 out of 5 Western retirees leave Vietnam broke. I looked it up after Lynn left, found the actual study. The number's real. But it's not Vietnam's fault. Vietnam didn't do this to me. Vietnam's just Vietnam. A country where things cost what they cost, where people do what people do. The fault is simpler than that. I came here running from loneliness and cold and grief. Thought I could buy my way into feeling alive again. Turns out, being alive costs exactly what you have. Then a bit more. Then everything. And when you've got nothing left, Vietnam is exactly as cold as Sweden, just 90 degrees hotter.